Hi everyone, this is Rohit from Lifestyle Mastery, and today I'm excited to have Jenny Rothenberg, who's the CEO of Smooth Media, which is a New York-based agency representing knowledge creators. They provide management and revenue services to the creators that they partner with. Jenny is also the ex-director of growth of Morning Brew. Welcome to the show, Jenny.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. So, I started this newsletter, been part of the podcast, but I've, listened to some of your interviews and really wanted to speak with you. But before we start about Smooth Media, how did you get your start in this crazy world of, newsletters and this creative field that you're a part of?
Yeah, so my second job out of college was at Industry Dive. And so, for those not familiar, it is a B2B media company. Started in DC, really focused on creating media publications for specific industries. So they have, Retail Dive about the retail industry, Waste Dive about the waste management and recycling industry, and many more. And so my first role there was in audience development, and that kind of entailed working with the editorial team, working on growth, and really just trying to reach more of those the niche audiences we were trying to get reading our publications. And then from there, I joined Morning Brew, taking the kind of the same business newsletter experience, only so many people involved in business newsletters on the growth side. And so joined Morning Brew as like the sixth or seventh employee, as the first kind of dedicated growth marketer on the team. And yeah, I've been doing the media newsletter world for 10-ish years now.
Yeah, interesting, because I've been an operator in tech startups, but what does growth really mean? You were a director of growth at Morning Brew, but what did growth mean to you, and how do you get to 3 million subscribers?
Yeah, so growth at a media company, I think, is kind of sometimes a misnomer. It can mean so many different things. At Industry Dive, it meant a lot more of like the more traditional journalism model of growth, which is working more in depth on SEO and content and topics and headlines and all of that kind of stuff. At Morning Brew, we really, was 2018 to 2020 was my time there, and we really ran growth less like a media company and more like a D2C company. So we really, the number one thing I did was spend money on paid advertising
Okay.
to get new subscribers. That was a huge part of the Morning Brew growth story, as well as the referral program. Those are kind of the two key pillars of how we're able to go from a couple 100,000 subscribers to 3 million and probably more now. But yeah, we spent pretty heavily on paid marketing during that era, especially Facebook ads were, the golden ticket. But what I think was really so key to our growth was that focus on not just are we seeing a front end CAC of $1 per subscriber and let's keep just spending because that's really cheap, but we were focused really intently on the quality of the subscriber we were bringing in, how often they were opening, if they were referring other subscribers, if they were clicking on ads. So we were really data driven in that sense and really poured all of our money into those best performing ad channels from like a quality perspective. So that was a lot of the day to day to get us growing month over month. And then, I think the Morning Brew referral program is pretty well documented and copied at this point, but that was, a huge lever for our growth as well, and, really helped build the flywheel.
Got it. And if somebody's trying to build their own newsletter in 2025, should they also start with a paid acquisition model where you spending a lot of money on Facebook ads to go from 0 to 1 and 1 to 1,000?
I would definitely recommend against that. I think there are a few different factors that made it work for Morning Brew that I kind of caution people against now. The first being that the concept of a newsletter was a little more novel. Obviously, there were newsletters before 2018, but
Yeah.
the hook of the ad of everything you need to know in 5 minutes, it's your smart friend talking to you. That was, the relentless copy we used over and over again. That was more unique than it is today. I think that like the general just like ad unit proposition of subscribe to this newsletter is a lot more overdone, and therefore just doesn't perform as well. But second is, we didn't spend on paid advertising until we had a business model that supported it. So we were able to, because we grew the list to be sizable enough that we were bringing in advertisers. Those advertisers were happy with the performance of their ads. The ads were written really well. They were the audience was being driven to a product that they're very likely to buy because our sales team was doing a good job of reaching the kind of advertisers that would align with our audience. So many other things were working well for us, so that we were able to invest in that paid marketing budget and continue to, pour our budget into growing the list. So having those two things in place first, I think, was really, just put us in a great position. But to answer your question of kind of how I would think about growing or starting to grow a newsletter in 2025, I think starting with other free content mediums, whether it's LinkedIn posts, TikToks, Instagram Reels, maybe I shouldn't say TikTok at a time like this, but, using other algorithmic content feeds to get your voice, your expertise, your content out there in a manner that doesn't require paid advertising, and using that kind of as the top of funnel to grow a newsletter, I think is, obviously a lot of people are doing it that way, and I think that's definitely the most effective in today's environment, but that could always change.
Yeah, no, absolutely, totally makes sense. And you had mentioned that Morning Brew strategy had been well documented, but how was the referral and the sign-up strategy? How did it going to be so successful, and can somebody still emulate it now?
Yeah, I think referral programs are amazing when they work, right? Like they are the ultimate word of mouth strategy, and that you can really measure and optimize. I think what we did really well at Morning Brew was we were so data driven about it. We had a spreadsheet that tracked every single touch point of the referral program. So every time someone viewed the referral program section in their newsletter, every time they visited their own landing page, every time someone else viewed their unique sign-up page, and so on, and we were tracking the conversion rates of all of those things and identifying where is the biggest gap that we think we can make an impact on. And I think there was something like 14 different touch points just in someone's first month being a subscriber, between automated emails and newsletter, mentions in the newsletter, different coded things in the top blurb that you would see a different top blurb if it was your 10th day as a subscriber, because we found that's when you were kind of bought in and likely to subscribe or to recommend it to a friend. So we were really relentless about testing every piece of that funnel and finding new creative ways to mention the referral program, ideally without being too annoying. So I think being really data driven and test oriented about it made us able to really continue to grow and scale it. I think one other factor is also just that we found also from data and testing is that new subscribers are actually way more likely to refer someone than you'd think. You would think like, oh, I have to be subscribed for like 6 months to really like something and recommend it to a friend. That's what I think most logic would tell you. It's really not what the story that the data would tell at all. So that just having that funnel of, like I mentioned before, of spending a lot of money on paid advertising also helps fuel the referral program, because there were just more people, seeing all of those touch points that we were constantly optimizing that, allowed us to really compound that growth.
Yeah, interesting. And, once you moved out of Morning Brew, was it a conscious decision to build something of your own? How did you go about founding Smooth Media?
Yeah, so, after Morning Brew got sold to Business Insider, my co-founders, Josh and Kinsey, and I, had kind of tossed around the idea of, we want to do something ourselves. What could make sense for us? And at the time, Josh had started consulting for these two creators, Colin and Samir, which hopefully everyone is familiar with. But they are a duo on YouTube, has been on YouTube for a long time, and they had kind of more recently honed in on talking about the creator economy and interviewing creators, talking about the business of creators in a way that really no one else was really doing. And so long story short, they started working with Josh, and he, they worked together on the idea of launching the Publish Press, which is our newsletter with them that we talk about, the news in the creator economy. If I were to shorthand it, maybe it's like Morning Brew for the creator economy. And so we've built that into, its own standing media company, and from there launched into what Smooth Media is today, which is representing knowledge creators and helping them build out their brand partnerships and their revenue. But yeah, the kind of long-winded answer to saying, we thought after the Morning Brew acquisition, how can we kind of take what we learned and apply it to this really exciting moment that creators are having? End of 2020, early 2021, it felt like a great bridge of, let's take that more traditional experience of Morning Brew and bring in this exciting development that's happening with independent creators, and how can we bridge those two things?
Got it. Interesting. And, before the call, you did mention that, there've been quite a few iterations, but how do your, growth philosophy has evolved, since you've also acquired few B2B niche publications like Energy Central, we'll talk about it, but how are you looking at, as acquiring businesses and also acquiring new customers?
Yeah, so when we launched Smooth, we had this idea of, we want to be a holding company of several niche media companies.
Okay.
And so when we launched Publish, we were like, this is aligning with that thesis. And then we tried to really keep launching more publishes while also building Smooth the agency at the same time. And that was just the mistake that we maybe corrected. We were, instead of trying to do both at once, we really said, let's focus on building the best agency for knowledge creators, and then we can kind of pick back up on this holding company strategy where we are owning niche media brands. And so we spent, the 2022 to 2023 really focusing on just that. And with that focus, we felt like we've now built a great agency. We know who we're serving. We have great brands working with us. We have great creators working with us. And then we saw the opportunity to acquire Energy Central. And so it became like the right time for us to kind of revisit the initial thesis of building out that portfolio. And that's how summer of last year we ended up acquiring Energy Central.
Got it. And just to follow up on that, we might have some listeners who are looking to acquire newsletters as a business strategy, but are there any niches which are very lucrative, like be it investing, and quite interesting that you bought into this B2B niche, but are there any niches which are very lucrative, which can be bought and then sold after a few years?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think there are, depending on the business model that you're going after. So I think that in niches like investing or personal finance, or even more like consumer style brands like gardening or cooking, if the business model is digital courses and memberships, then there are niches like that you can get really specific on that I think can make great businesses. What we're really we're not good at that. We don't know, that's not our forte, and we know that. So what we really focus on is those specific B2B industries that lend themselves well to an ad-supported business model. Okay. And so, coming from Industry Dive, they wrote the book on this. So that was some great experience for us to kind of, understand what to be looking for a niche to really make sense to support that kind of model.
Got it. And the term knowledge creator is very central to Smooth Media's strategy. How do you define this category, and what made you focus on this specific type of a creator?
Yeah, we define knowledge creators as creators putting out content that is educational and insightful. That's why their audience is coming to them. I think when a lot of people think creator or influencer, they think more lifestyle, they think more get ready with me's, which are great and is an amazing pocket of the internet. But what really we felt like aligned both with our experience and our interests was, this is the side of the internet that we love, like whether it's like the nerdy side of the internet or the boring side, some may call it. Like, we love the creators who are obsessive about the topics that they're covering, and it is their passion, and they want to be putting out content that's exploring that with their audience. And we think that's both exciting and interesting, but also aligns with the business models that we have the most experience in and see the most opportunity in. And so it's kind of a merge of those two things. And yeah, being able to really hone in on the term knowledge creator, it really resonates with the creators who identify that way. And also lends itself well to speaking to brands about the type of creators that we're working with, who maybe this is their first time working in creator marketing or influencer marketing, and they didn't really see their brand doing that because they're more of a, a serious tech brand or B2B brand. But when we're saying, we work with knowledge creators whose audiences are coming to them for insight, for education, then it tends to really resonate.
Got it. And you've been in this creator space and the newsletter space for close to 10 years. What's been the best growth decision, and what's been your worst growth decision?
I got made fun of a lot for this at Morning Brew. One time I insisted we try to sponsor the subway ads for the Wi-Fi in the New York City subway, which in theory sounds not like that bad of an idea, but it was. I think I spent like $10,000 or $15,000 and we got like 3 subscribers. So I don't know if you wanted that specific of an example, but that was something where we were constantly throwing things at the wall of like what are creative things we're not thinking of, and so that was a tough one where I definitely missed the mark. But you win some, you lose some. I'm trying to think of what our best in the realm of Morning Brew. Also, I think what really I've hammered this point enough, but I do think it's worth emphasizing is across the board we were really I was constantly optimizing not toward the front end results and really focusing on the long-term engagement. And I think that's what really set up the growth flywheel for success, is that we weren't, of course we were churning subscribers, but it's not like we were spending all this money for them to be subscribed for a few days, but putting in a lot of levers and process that would make sure that we were optimizing those early on engagement points, because we could see the results in the data of how impactful it was on a subscriber actually staying with the newsletter in the long term, and it just, I think, made a huge difference.
Right, and there are different platforms on which you need to put your content on. You mentioned, instead of paid ads, you can use social media channels to promote your content and get more subscribers in. And a lot of people talk about repurposing content, but what advice you give to listeners who are looking to, master content marketing and put their message across, be it on LinkedIn, on X, and a lot of B2B executives are looking to get more leads in, but how do you build that growth flywheel?
Yeah, it's a good question. I feel like something I hear a lot that I try to get people to change their minds on is, I think some people will come to us or to me and say, I want to launch a podcast to grow my newsletter, or I want to post on LinkedIn to grow my YouTube, or something like that, where they're really thinking way too channel specific. And I try to kind of get them to answer why, of why do you not view LinkedIn as its own engine, YouTube as its own engine, podcast as its own engine, and so on, and really make sure that if you are thinking about it that way, that there's a true business reason for it, because I think especially now with, like you mentioned, founders having their own content strategies, of course brands having their own content strategies, understanding which platform is going to achieve which goal and aligning towards that, as opposed to trying to make them all point towards one, whether it's your favorite or whether you think it should be the most impactful. Really just questioning your own rationale on that and letting kind of each platform do its own thing.
Got it. And since you've been in the a growth director, and you're now running your own business, when do you find out a hire is working out or not, especially when it comes to a growth marketer or somebody especially in the content space?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that I tend to really listen to and pay attention to what kind of questions, whether it's in an interview or in someone's first week. I think you can really tell if someone's brain is working in the right way by the questions that they're asking. And if they seem, either they're not asking any questions, then that's probably a bad sign for its own reason. But if they're asking questions that don't seem like they either are grasping what you're telling them, are grasping the business's focus areas, or they're not critically thinking about it, I think that's usually a pretty strong sign to whether or not someone's going to be a fit.
Right, and earlier we talked about Energy Central, which was an acquisition you did for Creative First company. But what made you and your founders see the potential in this vertical, and are you looking to double down on those sort of verticals going forward?
Yeah, definitely. So, in the energy space specifically, there's a lot of, change happening in the industry between the technology, policy, and the literal environment. So many things are impacting this industry. And so that's something I learned very early on from my days at Industry Dive is if an industry has changed, then there's going to be news. And you need the industry to have news for there to be content and for there to be interest and for the members of that industry to need to be consuming content about it. If there's news and there's change, then that's just one general sign that you can check that off as that's good criteria met. What we also really liked about the energy industry is, what we're trying to build with our Smooth portfolio is a centralized sales team at Smooth Media. And so we want to be working with brands at the Smooth Media level who are also advertising with the published press, which we do already. Working with brands at Smooth Media who want to work with creators but also want to work with Energy Central. And while that's not necessarily an immediate flip of the switch, there is so much happening in tech and AI and space that is relevant to the energy industry, and that's a lot of the advertisers we work with at the Smooth Media level. So finding that sort of synergy and overlap between the types of advertisers that want to reach Energy Central also made it really interesting to us.
Got it. And you made an interesting point about an industry which is always moving. Do you think is it late to build something in AI? Because there are a lot of newsletters which have done really well, and the podcast also. But do you think is it too early or is it too late to get into the sector of AI?
I think definitely not. I think what we're always looking for is even more specificity because AI is now spanning every industry and every function. So is it AI in sales? Is it AI in the retail industry? How can we narrow down even further? Because we do work with a lot of creators who talk about AI and tech more generally, and so niching down is always interesting to us.
Got it. And your team brings together, experience from Morning Brew, Industrial Drive, and other, traditional media. How do you, get those different perspectives, influence your strategy, and how do you get to make a consensus when it comes to, decision making at Smooth Media?
Yeah, I think what we really benefit from is, Industry Dive and Morning Brew were really just extremely well-run businesses and both bootstrapped. And so the decision-making, the team building, the processes and systems all had to be really well done. And I think that we benefited so much from being able to, experience that and live that firsthand. And that's more probably tactical, but it is definitely influencing our ability to kind of set up the team well for success, to be profitable, to know how we're going to grow the next 6, 12, 18 months. Is because of that experience. But what I think is more specifically interesting to maybe creators in media is, we thought in the terms of more traditional media, right, where it was inventory and ad schedules and planning on more of a logistical basis of, creators don't really use the term inventory. They think a more traditional Hollywood talent agency isn't really going to use that word. And that's really how we like to kind of bridge those two things, and I think it's really helped us bring perspective to creators of how they can view themselves as a media business and not just a constant humming machine of content that has to just be putting out more content so they can sell more ads and more content so they can sell more ads, but really thinking of themselves as building a media business with inventory, with a schedule, with quarterly goals, and all of the good things that come with a well-run business.
Got it. And what's been the biggest challenge for you when you're looking to transition from an agency to a media company operator?
For me personally?
Yes. Yeah, for you.
Yeah. So I think what we're trying to always get better at is really being diligent about what is one person's roles and responsibilities, and identifying where do they need help, where is there like maybe overlap, but making sure that there isn't two people working on the same thing or two people responsible for the same thing. Because like you mentioned, we are maybe trying to bite off a lot. And so yeah, in order to set ourselves up to be able to achieve all of that, there has to be really clear division among our team and among our leadership, of who is responsible for what, and being really communicative on that, to make sure that no one's dropping the ball, but everyone can get done what they need to get done and context switch as much as they need to achieve what we want.
Got it. And earlier before the call, you had mentioned you're not just focused on newsletters, but you're looking at other content platforms like Instagram and podcasts and YouTube. Do you think the newsletter operator business has been there for multiple decades, but are there any specific platforms that you're really optimistic about that could be would have really great revenue generating opportunities going forward?
We're really bullish on LinkedIn. I think a lot of people are maybe saying it now, but I think it's especially for our type of business, it's just such a great place where people are being professional, where you're inputting your data of what industry you work in, what function you work in, and there's just so much potential for the content served to you to continue to just be more and more tailored to your job and more educational to you, which really aligns well, obviously, with what we're doing. And they're really pushing short form video, and we're seeing creators have a lot of success with just even reposting what they're putting on Reels and TikTok and putting that on LinkedIn and getting engagement that is really high quality. And so with our the through line through everything we do is wanting to reach the right people or the right audience consuming a creator's content or an Energy Central content, to be reaching the right people. And I think LinkedIn will continue to be a great place to do that.
Got it. And Jenny, you're juggling multiple different business models, be it agency services and media operations. How do you maintain that sort of focus, and how do you get to decide how do you allocate your resources across different business platforms?
Yeah, I think we're really try to be slow and steady and thoughtful about how we go about launching something new or expanding our service or expanding the team, and making sure that we are able to do it, in our bootstrapped way, where we aren't over hiring, but are putting the right people in the right place and setting them up to win. And whether it's between me and my co-founders, making sure that we are giving the newer business areas or the newer team members adequate attention and setting them up to be great independent, contributors in their role. It's just, we really try to hire people who want that empowerment and want that independence, and it's like a core value of how we run the company. And by hiring people who really subscribe to that, we're hopefully, setting them up to be able to, run their shit very well, and then that allows us to expand.
Right. And I just want to follow up. You've been part of two bootstrap media companies, but are you looking to raise more capital and grow, or would you want to keep it bootstrap going forward?
As of now, we see ourselves, maintaining the bootstrapped mentality, but what we see the largest opportunity in would be raising at the, Smooth Holdings level, so that we can go acquire several more Energy Centrals at once, as opposed to the one at a time method we've gone with so far. But that's really the one path that would make the most sense for us.
Got it. And what is your criteria when you're looking to evaluate future acquisition targets or new publication launches? What's the strategy going forward for you?
Yeah, so we really don't have a specific size of audience or revenue that is most important to us. It kind of goes back to what I said earlier about being in an industry that has news, that aligns well with the ad-supported model, because that's what we want to stay consistent on. And there are industries that we're just like genuinely more interested in than others because we're human and we like what we like. But then there's also industries that probably just make a lot of sense and serve well as good business opportunities. And so it's kind of a mix of things. And what I see ourselves ideally doing well both with Energy Central and with future acquisitions is seeing the opportunity to tack on more to an existing singular product, whether it's just a newsletter or just an event or just a podcast. What we really want to be great at and see the opportunity in with any acquisition target is, this is just a newsletter, but we see a great opportunity for a podcast, a show on this industry, and we would love to, get going with that. Or we see a great opportunity for an in-person, large-scale conference, an annual conference in this industry, and we would love to, build the brand that way. So really being able to scale it into like a multi-channel brand is something we look for as well.
Got it. So super interesting. And I quickly want to do the top three. What's your favorite business book?
I would say my favorite is probably Traction by Gino Wickman. I'm saying his name right. So that has definitely been the most impactful in terms of how we run the company day to day. I think me and my co-founders all read it in our Morning Brew days. And I recommend especially earlier in your career, I think it helps you understand kind of what a good operational framework is. And while it's not the most riveting maybe for everybody, it's definitely really tactical and useful.
Got it. We'll put that in the show notes. And, if you could go back in time when you started Smooth Media, what is the one thing you would have focused on or done anything differently?
I think we would have focused more. I think when we launched, we were vague and we said yes to a lot of different things, because we were eager, first timers and, wanting to serve everyone. Early on, we worked with family and parenting creators. We worked with comedians. We worked with all different style of awesome people, but it didn't make sense for the business. And so I think being really diligent about what I say yes to would have definitely been a mistake I would have corrected.
Got it. And do you have any favorite online tools, for example, Gmail, Slack, Zoom, ChatGPT?
I would say we run the business very almost exclusively on Notion. I think when Notion is down for even 5 seconds, our Slack channel pops off and everyone's freaking out. I think it's just a really great tool for collaboration and for everybody to be on the same page in an aesthetically pleasing setting. It's a lifesaver for us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's also one of my favorite tools. We'll put that in show notes. And Jenny, what's the best way people can reach out to you and know more about Smooth Media?
Yeah, you can email me at jenny@smoothmedia.co or check out our website.
Got it. We'll put that in the show notes. Jenny, thank you so much for taking your time and speaking to us. I really enjoyed my conversation with you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.